if I've got time, I just want to add this because I think this is really important, and I think it'll put things into perspective. 80%, give or take, of chronic illness is lifestyle related. This comes from the experts and the doctors that I trust. So if 80% of chronic illness can be reversed or prevented, right? This is the important part. If it can be prevented from the coming generations and potentially reversed or dramatically reduced in the current population, think about what would happen to doctors around the world if they lost 80% of their patients. And this could happen within the space of 6 months to a year. Think about what would happen to the pharmaceutical industries if 80% of their products or their customers disappeared in the space of a year. Think about what would happen to the lobbyists in Washington if big agriculture, big chemical, big pharmaceutical had lost 80% of its income. Think about what would happen to mainstream media if multinational food companies and the like, pharmaceutical industries, lost 80% of their income to advertise to the general public. Think about the hospitals if 80% of their customers or clientele didn't need them and were only there for acute trauma cases and life-saving operations. The whole system would change in the space of a year. We would not have to fight against any of these agendas. If we individually and collectively took health back into our own hands, and obviously still have our doctors, I'm not just discounting them, but just that simple act of, the rebels out there, the defiant people out there, I believe this is the single most rebellious act that anybody can do, which would have the ripple effect of changing the world by taking ownership of your health and removing yourself as much as you can from that medical-based system. This is why I'm so passionate this book that's coming out, why I'm so passionate about people like Bobby Kennedy coming into the position and others that have been sort of shouting this for years, or if not decades, and the doctors that have really put it all on the line to learn about nutritional health and other simple things that we can do in our life to have this long-term regenerative health that actually puts them out of business to a degree. These doctors and dietitians that have stepped out, they're doing themselves a disservice by sharing really beautiful information, but they also see the way in which we can effectively change the whole system and change the agenda. So things like COVID will never happen to us again, because if you think about it, in their story, who was COVID hurting? It was hurting the people that had the comorbidities, that were inflamed, that had many diagnoses against them. Now, if we can prevent 80% of this chronic illness, right, next time a COVID or something comes through, that population that would have been largely at risk of these types of things, perhaps we wouldn't have a risk group anymore for these types of things, because people's immune systems are functioning on all cylinders. We don't have the obesity, we don't have the overweight, we don't have the inflammation, we don't have this chronic illness. That's the future that I see. It is possible. Whether it happens or not comes down to the individual and then the collective community. But it's possible. We were there once. And we can be there again. And maybe COVID was the catalyst to raise awareness for people to now question, as you were so beautifully saying before. Maybe this is the turning point, and we needed to go through this period of time to see some of the nonsense and for people to question everything. Everything, to come back to that place of curiosity, because curiosity breeds wisdom in my perspective, because we go on this beautiful adventure of seeking knowledge, and then not only seeking knowledge and having that, but then implementing it for ourselves.
Certainly, that's the silver lining to COVID, I think, is I do think there was sort of a great awakening from COVID that I know I certainly had. I trusted vaccines and thought, well, the doctor says take it, so we take it, and you should take it too. And it was only until COVID that I thought, wait a minute, wait a minute, wait a minute. They're rushing this one out. They haven't tested it. And then and then people would say, yeah, but Kim, they've done this before with other ones, maybe not this fast, but look into this vaccine, look into this, look into this. And then it was like, wow, actually, I'd never stopped to question any of this. And suddenly, my whole worldview had been shaken when it comes to medicine and research papers and the science that all really shifted for me. And I think it has for a lot of people. I do think that the silver lining for COVID, like you mentioned, Bobby Kennedy being more in the spotlight, people knowing more about him, knowing more about children's health defense and the things that he's been saying. And I think now, look at the position he's in. Now he's going to have a position of actual power and influence. And hopefully he does start talking, which he has been, so we know he will. He'll be talking about food. He'll be talking about how food has been killing us. It's all these things that we think are good. Food and medicines have been killing us. They also can help us, but we have been utilizing them in a way that is extremely unhealthy. We eat way too much, right? We gorge out, eating so much. And as you mentioned, you're just about to do a fasting. I'm a big fan of fasting. I think fasting is the way to lose weight. Even all these people on Ozempic, right? They're like, how are they actually losing the weight? It's because they're not eating as much, right? I mean, that's what it causes them to do, is eat less. So people are eating less, they're losing weight. It's like, wow, that's a miracle. And then you find that all of your health markers improve and everything improves. And fasting has been proven to be but they don't want to talk about fasting because it's free, right? And so they don't ever want to talk about it. But the guy that won the Nobel Prize for medicine in, what was it, 2016? It was on autophagy, right? It was like the guy that he was like, this is actually this cures stuff. I think he was a Japanese doctor, and there's just so much science on that. But of course, big pharma would rather. Well, I think maybe that's how they came out with Ozempic. Quite honestly, I think they saw, wow, fasting works, so we got to give something to people that makes them not eat. And this is, a way to mimic fasting without people feeling the pain that fasting causes the first couple of days, when you're like, I want to eat something. And I've done stretches of long fasts of 5 days, drinking. I don't do dry fasts. I would still drink water, but and salt water at that, but still would forego food. And I would always feel so much energy and get so much stuff done. By the time I got to like that fourth day, I'd be like all cylinders firing. Um, but yeah, I'm hoping that with Bobby coming into the administration, that people are going to start, that there will be maybe government effort, as much as maybe we don't like government, but there does need to, but the reality of government is that all of these, why are kids being forced to take all these vaccines before they go to school? It's because the government recommends, on their vaccine schedule, all of these different vaccines. And so then private businesses take those recommendations from the government and say, well, we mandate it. We're requiring it if you're going to participate in our business or in our program or private school or whatever. And so those government recommendations have power. And maybe now with Bobby going into the administration, there's going to be better recommendations. The recommendations, like you said, of eat healthier. Here's how you can eat healthier. These are specifically the recipes and the foods you should be feeding your kids. This is what you need to be feeding yourself. I just think that will be such a massive, amazing, game-changing turning point for society. And I'm really hoping that this goes forward. Can you just give us a couple of real quick, before you go, a couple of real quick tips from your book? You've got Healthy Food for Healthy Kids, 120 simple, nourishing, gluten and dairy-free recipes for your whole family will love. I know a lot of people are, what? No dairy. They didn't let me have dairy when I was a kid. My parents were like, no dairy, you're not a baby. you weaned off the milk, and now you're, and I'm Asian too, so lactose intolerance kind of runs in the gene pool. But what would you say is the most damaging things people are feeding their kids right now that they should just quit, and what should they swap it for?
Yeah, I'll just go into the gluten and dairy free. Obviously, Children's Health
Okay.
Defence has a lot of people come to Children's Health Defence because of vaccine injured children. That's one of the reasons, and some of the side effects from vaccine injuries is behavioural difficulties on the autism spectrum, and the list goes on and on and on. So, not that grains or gluten and dairy is inherently bad. I'm not saying that, but what seems to work with these children and these families is to remove these foods because they have a cross reaction in the body, which can cause inflammation for the gut. So, the reason that we do gluten free, dairy free for these children is because it seems to work a lot better than having the gluten and dairy in the diet until the gut can be functioning a lot better, and then it can be a
Hmm.
choice of how much gluten and dairy you choose to put into the diet. Some people should never probably put gluten and dairy into their diet ever because it's just a problem. It's sensitive, or they're allergic to it, or it's just it causes inflammation for them. Whereas other people, they're fine on the grains and the gluten and the dairy. Again, this is an individual journey that people need to work out for themselves. But to
Hmm.
cut a long story short, we take those two foods basically out of that book because it seems to be what seems to work for these children, to help them with the behaviour and help them with their development, is to take those two pretty much food groups out, and then just celebrate meat and vegetables to a degree,
Yeah.
or seafood and vegetables to a degree. It's really simple. My whole film, The Magic Pill, could be summed up in that one sentence, because I asked this fella that was working with our Indigenous here in Australia, and they did an ancestral diet for them to help them reverse type 2 diabetes. I'm like, what's the secret, mate? He's like, vegetables. I was like,
Meat and
well,
vegetables.
it's pretty much that simple. Meat, and I should just stipulate, if you can get the best quality meat, from holistically farmed or regenerative farmed environments, or organic and grass fed, and if you are eating seafood, wild caught seafood, and not too much of the farm seafood where they're putting pellets and who knows what into their diet. So the most natural food possible seems to be good. Um, Kids love human beings, but especially children. They need to have enough fat and protein in their diet. It's as simple as that. Our brains run on fat, and obviously our bodies run on also need protein, enough protein to build muscle and develop and grow. So I would have an emphasis on good quality meat and seafood, and fatty bits of meat and seafood as well into the diet. That's why, you look in the Mediterranean diet, they always promote fatty, oily fish, but for some reason they don't like to promote fatty meats, which is a interesting sort of conundrum, or hypocritical sort of stance. So for children, once upon a time, our children would eat brains and liver and all of these sort of fatty, rich bone marrow, these types of nose to tail ingredients. And that over the last few generations has become icky, or I don't like that type of thing. And, so I think we're seeing huge developmental problems in children, and behavioural problems, apart from medical interventions that affect some of them, a small percentage or a larger percentage. So just going back to how our ancestors, a few generations ago, and, Kim, you mentioned Asian heritage. You spend any time in Asia, they're eating the whole animal, nose to tail, and that's the icky parts. They're the most revered, the most loved in Asian societies, and most societies around the world, except in the Western ones, where we're sort of we've gone from the celebration of a wide variety of natural ingredients to this sort of very, very narrow sort of band of what we deem as palatable for us anymore. So part of what I'd love to explore with people is, if you love an adventure, increase that repertoire of these things that you might have been brainwashed or conditioned into not thinking you will ever enjoy, and take it from one of the fussiest children that has ever existed, Pete Evans, who became a chef and challenged himself to learn to be a great chef. I needed to face my biggest fears, which was eating offal, liver, heart, kidneys, brains, blood, all of this thing, oysters. Ugh. Yeah, as a kid, I couldn't think of anything worse, right? But I knew to be a great chef because all the great chefs around the world, especially in Asian cultures, French, European cultures, they love to cook these types of foods. So it was a big challenge for me, I've got to tell you. Guess what my favorite foods are now? As a 51-year-old adult that journeyed into some of his deepest, darkest fears around food. My most delicious ingredients on my table now: liver, oysters, bone marrow, blood sausage, kidneys, brains. And I'm not saying that that's what's on my menu, my dinner table every night, but I'm not averse to eating those from time to time, and I think they're very beneficial for us. But just going on this wonderful adventure of food and understanding where some of our fears and insecurities around food may have come from. Food is such a, I know we've probably gone over time here, but I'll just finish by this. Food is such an emotional thing for us, which is why a lot of people emotional eat, you know, because they were rewarded as a child. You did well at school. Let's go to McDonald's, or let's celebrate with
Yeah.
Kentucky Fried Chicken or KFC. Let's celebrate with going to and having an ice cream because you're such a good boy or girl. Let's celebrate you with some of this food that we never used to think was bad, but as a treat.
Right.
So, and I've spoken to this about with so many of our guests and clients over the years, that food is such it's the reward mechanism and its emotional connection that brings them comfort, brings them joy. And for some people, it's the only thing in their lives these days that they have control over, that can give them that instant, that emotional hug, that 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 bite of that junk food can give them that feeling that they're craving because they've lost connection with their loved ones, might have passed on or something like this, or it gives them that memory of that. So don't feel bad if you have these emotional food cravings. Just realize what they are and perhaps try to get to the root cause of it over time to see why you may be drawn to overeat these types of foods or have an addiction
Yeah.
to certain things, because I know it's difficult for people. It can be a very difficult journey, but just creating that conscious awareness as to why, and again being curious, why am I addicted to this, or why I go to that when this happens in my life. For some it's alcohol, for some it's gambling, for some it's cookies or biscuits, or the
Right.
ice cream tub. And I understand how difficult and challenging it can be for some people to in their relationship with food, but you know starting at that
That's the
base
tough
point
thing.
is that the question is why. Once we ask the
Right.
question why,
Right.
we can become our own detective and go on the journey. So yeah.
I found for me, I mean, I think we all love food, and many of us, I know myself, I have a definite, serotonin is released when I eat. I like to eat something and release that serotonin. And I found for myself that the way to try to curb it is reading a book. Honestly, is just getting lost in a book. If I sit down and I read a book, then I forget about the craving to eat. To go into the kitchen, open up the cupboards, be like, what can I snack on? What can I, So I think if we find those healthy replacements, it can certainly help kind of calm the brain down and put or even just getting into a TV show. Although when I get into a TV show, then I want to sit there and kind of snack while I eat. At least if I'm reading, I can't. It's like a little harder to do to like snack and read at the same time. It's a little bit more challenging, but I my takeaway on this, thank you so much for having this conversation. I just listening to you, it's just reminding me as I'm hearing you, I'm like, I got to eat better. I'm sitting here. I'm sure everybody watching is having the same inner thoughts, the inner dialogue of I got to eat better. And I'm sitting here thinking, I just got to get back to cooking the way that my mom cooked, which was rice. I mean, I don't know if you promote rice, but I know it is gluten free, right? But for Asians, just the basic Asian diet, which I grew up on, which is, in my mind, fairly healthy, which is that fish, the vegetables, the meats, the fatty meats, even. And, a bowl, and it was just always, soups, lots of soups, rice. It was just a very healthy, clean way of eating. And I'm thinking, I got to get back to that rather than, some just eating more of an American diet that I know is not exactly healthy. And so I'm kind of having that thinking of, I got to clean it up. I got to be healthy. You're inspiring me. You're inspiring me to work out. I got to care more, or we're not getting any younger. Right. And I don't want to feel sick and inflamed and painful and have all kinds of chronic diseases when I'm older. And now is the time. And even if you are older, I see these amazing people online that change their bodies in their 70s. There was like this woman, I don't know if you've seen her on Instagram, named Joan, Train with Joan. And she's like in her 70s, maybe even pushing 80. And she was a regular 70-year-old. And then she just started eating better and working out. And she is shredded now. And she's at the gym. And I mean, it's the most incredible transformation. It just shows like it's never too late at any age. I mean, when you see Joan, you're like, okay, if Joan can do it in her 70s and completely transform and have a new lease on life, and now she's wearing a swimsuit and traveling and feeling great in her 70s or 80s or whatever, anybody can do it. It's incredible. And it does. Food is a massive, massive, massive portion of that. And being healthy, part of being healthy, food is, I think, the biggest factor of all, of everything. But I know that's my takeaway. I'm having these thoughts as we're having this conversation. So I really appreciate it. I know a lot of other people, I think we all feel inspired now to be a little healthier, even if it's just one little thing that we're going to do, add more green vegetables. One trick I learned was, okay, you could eat whatever you want, but just add a green salad. So just make sure you have your green salad. And then that kind of forces, once you eat the green salad first, or have the green salad or the soup first, once you do that, then you notice, that alone helped me change my diet by just eating less of the junk. Cause I would at least start with like a bowl of miso soup or a salad or something, then I'd be like, now I can gorge out, but then it would help me, these little things, right, that help us. But I think in the end, it's great that we're having this new, I think, change and awakening. I'm happy to see it. Happy that you're also on the forefront of this. Can't wait to see what Bobby does in the administration, and just excited for it. So Pete, thank you so much for being here with us. I do have the link down below for the book, Healthy Food for Healthy Kids. I know a lot of people are going to need to grab this book. Like I said, I'm going to get it for my family members because they're struggling right now. Like, what do I feed them? So thank you so much, Pete. Thank you for being here. Thanks for watching this clip from the full Kim Iverson Show. If you want to watch the full show, visit KimIversonShow.com. The show airs every Monday through Friday at 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern. Again, it's KimIversonShow.com. See you there.